Tonight, the search for some solutions to address a rise in violent crimes in Atlanta. Joining me is City Council President Felicia Moore, also mayoral candidate. I'd love your perspective on the newest numbers that APD shared with us. Murders up 80% from this time last year, 47% climb in aggravated assaults, also 47% more cars stolen. So much has happened in just a year. What do you feel is driving the spike in violent crimes?
First of all, the numbers are unsettling and they're heartbreaking. And I know that they're shocking people across the city. But then again, people are seeing crime across the city and recognize that we have a problem. And so, you ask what started it. I think, particularly when you're talking about the issues of gun violence and the shootings that are going on, each and every one of them have a different story behind them. I recently asked at a public safety committee meeting, and I'm waiting for that information to see exactly what are the things that are driving people to shoot each other, and how do we look at those categories, and how do we as a city see if we can intervene in any way. We don't have police officers on every corner. If we can find a pattern that we can track and we can attack, then that's something that we should do. Many of them are domestic. People do know each other and maybe have had some conflict with each other, and they're using the guns to settle that conflict.
You have so much experience on the council, more than 20 years. Is there something now that is so different than in the years past? Do you attribute some of it to the pandemic or unemployment? Are any of those dots that we're able to connect yet?
Well, I would say that the pandemic is certainly something that I haven't experienced, nor has anyone else experienced in their lifetime, that has taken place. And we certainly can't count that out as a major and contributing factor. One thing the pandemic has done as well is pull the cover off of a lot of things that we have ignored: our social inequities, our disparities in health, and the list goes on and on. And I think it's also opened up the opportunity for people to commit crimes because of maybe some of those social inequity issues and unemployment and the things that you mentioned. But as well, I think that it's just an unsettling time for people, particularly people being locked in and locked up and trying to make sure that they can stay clear of the virus. So I think COVID does have a lot to do with it, because I believe if you look at the numbers, you can see that they started to increase once this pandemic happened. And it also culminated with what preceded right before that, which was some of the unrest that we had because of police abuse, cases that happened in other cities as well as our city, and the social justice movement and the protests that happened. All of this is made for a perfect storm, unperfect storm, I would like to call it, of things that have culminated in a lot of activity in our city.
Yeah, we have seen turmoil within the Atlanta Police Department. Of course, thinking about the death of Rayshard Brooks and the college students who were tased during those protests last May. And several officers are facing charges. I know Erica Shields stepped down as chief. No permanent replacement has been named. How big of an impact do you think all of that has played, or has it, on APD's ability to address the rising crime?
Well, I believe that it has definitely, from hearing from officers, and I talked to many on different levels, from the patrol officers to those that are in command staff. And of course, they would recognize and say that those incidents were the beginning of the downward swing in their morale. And that also contributed to us losing a lot of officers, those who were uncertain that they were going to be due process in the event that they were involved in some incident that needed to be scrutinized or investigated, because they want to make sure that if they are in trouble, that they want to at least have that due process, and they don't want to end up in a Fulton County jail. So that kind of started the morale. It also started, as you remember, some of the officers saying that they were sick, going out on something like a blue flu, many of them leaving. And now we are down a lot of officers. for that and probably other reasons as well. And the lack of officers on the street certainly contributes, because people who will commit criminal activity, they know that that's not happening. And on top of that, what we talked about earlier with COVID taking place as well, and we have our bars, nightclubs, and restaurants that are filled to the brim on the weekends. We've also seen a lot of activity and shootings around there. We've attracted a lot of people from around the country to come and party in the city of Atlanta.
You were talking about the number of officers. Do you know how many open positions? Is there a need for more staffing, even for officers on the street? Where does that stand within Atlanta Police?
I do not have the direct numbers, but depending on who you talk to, we are said to be down over 400 or either 500 officers. And so that is sworn officers. But let's break that number down a bit more, because what's important to me is not just the number of sworn officers we have, but how many sworn officers that we actually have on the street. And that number is considerably less. And so that's why I believe we need to, because of the crime that is happening, have an all hands on deck approach. And those sworn officers that are doing administrative duties, that are behind desks, need to get on the streets. I do know that we to augment other units and some administrative people for occasions like we had this past weekend with the All-Star games. But I believe that we're at a point that we need to find a rotation that keeps that constant number until we're able to do the recruiting that we need to do to get our numbers back up.
Is there something the city could or should be doing now you feel that would help have some immediacy that's not currently happening?
Well, I think, there's a touch on everything. And I would say that one thing we could and should be doing, and I know the timing is even worse than it was when I talked about it last year, is starting a search for a permanent police chief. I think the being a permanent chief sort of sends a signal and a message in the leadership position in the role of the police department. I also believe that we need to immediately, if not sooner, sit down and have a conversation with our partners in our county justice system, the courts, the jails, the DA, and others, to make sure that what's people have complained to me about is occurring. The people who are violating people's rights by committing violent crimes are getting back on the street. And we need to be a little bit more selective in terms of who we let go, because everybody doesn't have to be or need to be killed. And those that we're letting back out on the streets to be able to commit the same crimes over. And those are some of the things that I think that we need to certainly work on right now. And then the other piece is to be as aggressive as we can. And I know there is some work being done, but as aggressive as we can on attracting officers, maybe trying to get back some of the officers who left earlier, looking at retirees to see if they will come back temporarily, as well as aggressively getting and staffing up our recruit classes so that we can have some new officers on the street as soon as possible.
What would you say to people who say they're not feeling safe?
Well, I understand that, and I'm not going to discount them that they don't feel safe. And I just ask and encourage citizens to recognize that they play a role as well in helping us to reduce crime. And they do that by being vigilant. I think a lot of times we go about our daily activity not anticipating that someone may come behind you or someone may slide in your vehicle. We need to keep our keys out of our cars, particularly those who have push button cars. You need to make sure the fob isn't there. We need to keep our guns safely secured in the cars, or don't carry them around in your car, or take them with you so that people aren't getting these guns and using them as violent crimes. I think that their citizens can be aware, and if you see something that doesn't look right, you need to make someone aware of that and make them aware immediately. We also have a role that we can play as citizens to be safe, as well as make sure everyone else is safe.
Is there any final thought you'd like to leave or anything I haven't asked that you'd like to address?
Well, just I would like to say that, I understand and my heart is broken too that we are seeing this rise in crime, particularly violent crime around our city. And I would just urge citizens to stay vigilant. That is important that we do that. And also stay engaged with City Hall. And we at City Hall, and particularly the executive branch, the chief, and the mayor, need to make sure that they are constantly, transparently, and clearly communicating to the public that we understand what's going on and what is being done on a daily or weekly basis to address the issue.
Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.